Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the FrostBytez gaming experience, where we are finally going to be getting started with our Pokemon Emerald version walkthrough. Gen 3 is finally here, and, you know, I've been going back and forth and debating on myself, what exactly did I feel like doing once Jade Empire was over and once Luna Nights was over. Already had a backlog of videos of me and James doing Phoenix Wright that we finally got caught up with, so I was like, okay, we can go ahead and do that. But what else do I feel like doing? And it came down to a lot of games, but I felt like the best one to do at the current timing of the year anyways would to be actually to go back into Pokemon and get a full look at Gen 3's walkthrough with the Emerald version. Now, some people might be a little bit confused. Why did I pick the Emerald version when Gen 2 I picked Gold and Gen 1 I picked Blue? And I'm pretty sure I've said it in previous videos, but when I do these games for YouTube, I usually like playing the version that I grew up with. And as it turns out, when it came to Gen 3, the version that I actually grew up with was Pokemon Emerald. Gen 3 was a generation of Pokemon that I didn't get into instantly, though. Alright, when I say that I grew up with Emerald, I don't mean like, oh, ever since it came out I had to play it. No, Gen 3 was one that I got into very late. I've stated many times, Gen 2 is my favorite generation, still is, and that was the one that I played the most with, Gen 1 here and there. But aside from that, I didn't really get into Pokemon at that time just yet. A lot of it was because I didn't really have the money to get into it. But once I did have the money to get into it, and we had this one local pawn gamer shop, in a sense, out of town, right next to our town, they had a copy of Emerald for a relatively good price. And that's kind of how I got introduced into Gen 3 and everything that Gen 3 had to offer. I knew about Gen 3 at that point, but I don't think it was until around the time that Gen 4 had come out that I actually went on my way to start playing Gen 3, really. So again, this was one that I got into very late, so my knowledge of Gen 3, not exactly as high as with Gens 1 and Gens 2, but regardless, it is a game that I have played a couple times over. I'm not gonna overstate and be like, oh, I played it so many times. I really haven't. I'm pretty sure I've fully completed Emerald once. And I'm not even talking about like a full Pokedex completion. I mean doing everything within the state of what you can do within the game. I've done it one time. Aside from that, I've played it a couple times. I did try and do a walkthrough already of Emerald numerous years back. And didn't like it as much on how I structured it. Gonna be a little bit different, especially with scheduling wise. This should be one that I should be able to get all the way straight through done. Whereas in the past, it was like I missed a couple uploads and it was going really slow, and just a number of other things I just didn't really like about it that caused me to get rid of it and have to look to start over, and here we are starting it over. Anyways, so just like with every other walkthrough, this is your first Pokemon walkthrough when it comes to this channel. Let me go ahead and explain how things go here. This is a full 100% gameplay-wise walkthrough. What that means is I am going to be facing every single trainer that you can face in the game. I am going to be finding every single item in the game, including the hidden items. And that's really about it. I'll be showcasing where the legendaries are. Whether I catch them or not at this point has become a joke of I try, but it doesn't always exactly work out, and sometimes I just say, forget it, I'm not even going to bother with it, and I just completely take them out. But I am going to showcase their locations to the best of my abilities. I know that there's some particular Pokemon, kind of like in Gen 2, I couldn't show off Celebi, because, I didn't have any means to show off Celebi. And before I continue on with that, obviously, Torchic, fire style Pokemon is obviously the Pokemon I'm going to take. It has nothing to do with the fact that Torchic is actually one of the better starting Pokemon along with Mudkip, because their third state evolution is really, really good, especially for Gen 3. But again, it's a fire type, and it's the Pokemon that I picked when I first started playing Gen 3, so, you know, that's why I go with it. Didn't really showcase the other two picks, but it is Trico, the grass type that only stays a pure grass type, and then Mudkip that can turn into a Swampert, which is part water, part ground, as we will see later on, considering the fact that our rival always has to pick the reverse of what we end up picking. So back to what you're going to get in this walkthrough. Again, you know, items, trainers, all of that, as many legendary Pokemon as I can show off, but I will not be completing the Pokedex. That is not what this 100% run is going to be. It is just going to be purely on the gameplay aspects of it. When it comes to wild encounters, because this is a post-commentary, when it comes to wild encounters, I will, aside from the first part, just to kind of showcase, hey, here's what a wild encounter is like, I will be cutting off all wild encounters in this entirety of the game. And the reason why I do that is because at first when I did Gen 2's walkthrough, I thought to myself, okay, I can show every single wild Pokemon at least twice, and you can get a feel of like what Pokemon is where, and you know what they look like, so I can showcase most of the Pokedex. Fact of the matter is that by battling every single trainer, we do showcase just about every single Pokemon in the game that you can catch in the wild as it is. And unless there's a particularly really rare Pokemon that I run into, I'm going to be editing all those out. I'll be editing all of my Pokemon Center trips out as well, minus again in the very first video, because it's just to showcase it and all that good stuff. And that's really all there is to it. You know, it's mostly just to showcase, hey, here's where Trainer X is, here's where Gym Leader Y is, here's where Legendary Pokemon is, here's where XYZ items are, including the hidden items, to give you guys an idea of like where you should go and what you should do in order to beat the game as a standalone, minus what you have to do with the Pokedex. Now, with that said, this is also going to come with a lot of stats. I'm not going to get all super high technical like some other people do, because you know, I kind of like doing things my own way. I like just showcasing the gameplay, and I like talking about the stats of what you can run into Pokemon where and whatnot. I know I could just put it somewhere onto the video, and maybe somewhere down the line I'll actually look to do something like that, but I don't know. For me, I kind of like just trying to keep it simple gameplay as much as possible. I throw in a, you know, an edit here and there whenever I think it's funny or appropriate or something like that, but in most cases, I don't like really just splurging too much stuff on the gameplay screen. I just prefer doing it with my voice, you know, which I know some people hate, but hey, get over yourselves. I kind of like my voice. When you head on over to getting your starting Pokemon in the very beginning, you're going to be in Route 101, because Gen 3 is the first one to, I think it's the only one to consider routes in the hundreds. I think every other one went back to normal routes through like 30 something. You know, this is like the only game, like I said, if I remember correctly, this is the only game where it actually is in the hundreds. But in Route number 101, where you do pick up your Torchic or your Trico or your Mudkip, the other Pokemon you can run into is, you have a Poochyena, 10% chance in the Ruby and Sapphire versions, and a 45% chance in the Emerald version. Zigzagoon, Ruby and Sapphire, 45% chance with a 10% chance in the Emerald version. And Wurmple has a 45% chance across all three games. Kind of like with Gen 1, the differences aren't based on what time it is. That was a Gen 2 thing that later on went to Gen 5 and so on and so forth. With Gen 3, it is literally just based on the games themselves. You know, so I'm not going to go into any huge morning, afternoon, evening like I had to do with Gen 2. What I'm going to have to do with, you know, Gen 4's revisit of Gen 2, which I probably am going to do because I love that game so much. But aside from that, we also saw ourselves into Route number 3, where we went against our rival May. And in that one, as far as the grass goes, because there's two separate parts of Route number 3, we'll get to the second half of it once we come back over to there. But for the grass portions of it, once again, Poochyena, Ruby Sapphire version, 30% chance with a 60% chance in the Emerald version. Zigzagoon, Ruby Sapphire has a 60% chance, while the Emerald version has a 20% chance. Wingull in Ruby and Sapphire have a 10% chance, whereas in the Emerald version, it is a 20% chance. Here we get ourselves the running shoes, which is a brand new thing into Pokemon, where if you hold down the B button, you can actually run instead of walk. Gets you to places faster, but it also ups the chance of you running into wild Pokemon. Biggest thing I'm going to say is that I call bullshit on the running shoes, because we clearly saw when we went to go help out Professor Birch that we ran to go see him. We didn't need running shoes in order to do that. That should have been something this kid can already do. We did not need brand new Air Jordan sneakers in order to start running all over the place. So I'm going to call bull on that. What's also really kind of bull is the fact that I actually did not run into a single Pokemon on my way to go up and face my rival May, and then, you know, didn't run into a single wild Pokemon. Very interesting that it's actually, you know, the first time that I run into wild Pokemon is after I get the running shoes. But in my humble opinion, you know, it feels more classic to the first generation, where your very first rival fight, they were both at level 5, went against each other. And so, you know, I kind of stayed true to the tradition of, hey, when you go against your rival, you should be at a level 5 star just like your opponent. You know, because I try to make things as even as I possibly can every now and then, but hey, what can you do? When it comes to this run particularly, I usually try to, like, divvy out what my team is going to be based on. I try not to have too many Pokemon from previous generations, because that's what the previous generations were for. Gen 1 obviously was all Gen 1 Pokemon. I believe my Gen 2 team had, I think it was either half and half, or I had 4 Gen 2 and 2 Gen 1 Pokemon. I'm not exactly sure. What I look to do with this run is I'm going to look to have... unless I change my mind, I need to look through and see, because I'm going to go with the team that I was originally going to use when I, you know, wanted to do this in the first place many years back. And I'm going to take a look through and see, do I still want to keep that team, or are there things I want to change up? One thing that I do want to keep consistent, though, is I do want to have 4 Pokemon that are Gen 3 related, and then maybe 1 Gen 2 and 1 Gen 1 Pokemon. Just so then the team focuses mostly on having a Generation 3 team feel to it, instead of, oh, Torchic is my starter, and then the rest are all Gen 1 and Gen 2. I kind of like to, you know, add as many of the current generations to it as best as possible. That's what I'm looking to do here. I do need to go through and see if it's the same team that I want to keep. I don't like have any... I'm not trying to build like some kind of really big competitive style team. I'm just looking to build a team that that just has Pokemon that I enjoy having on my team in general for starters, but then also ones that I know are good for just beating the game. You know, it's not like I'm going to be going to my local game store and I'm going to take this team into like some kind of competition for like VGC or something like that. We don't even have anything like that here where I live. So I just try and just showcase whatever I think is going to be fun and the easiest to catch. One of which I'm not really looking forward to trying to catch, but, you know, what can you do? You know, most of the catching is going to be done off screen, but I will showcase when I do catch it in the video. I do my favorite little edit where I walk around and I run into a wild Pokemon, and I make it look like it's the very first one I run into, but really I edit out like 20 false run-intos until I finally get it. The reason why I talk to this child, okay, because you don't get anything out of it. All the child says is, oh, the grass is up to my nose, and then sneezes. So why did I showcase that? Because I swear every single time that I have played Generation 3, mostly Emerald, I think I played Ruby once, but every single time I played Emerald, after talking to that kid, the minute I turn around, I run into a wild encounter. And it didn't fail me here either. Which tells me, you know, that either A, I'm just lucky in that instance, but it could also tell me that B, that kid sneeze is what causes a wild Pokemon to come out and want to fight you. Is that really what happens? Probably not. I'm probably just getting really lucky, but I do remember that every single time that I have played this game, that child sneeze has always caused a Pokemon to appear. Every single time. Now, I've never gone on my way to see if it happens twice, but every first time that I talk with that kid, a Pokemon will come out and attack me. Give it a try, see if it works for you, but it's always done it for me. Always. I always find it hilarious. That's why I like showcasing it. Is I'm like, oh, I'm going to talk with this kid, and then boom, wild encounter. Happens every single time. Anyways, right now we find ourselves in route number 102, and before we start going into that, a new thing here is the way berries are done. Right now, in Gen 2, berries were you grab the berry and then it would refresh itself after a certain amount of time. Here, you have to actually plant the berries and then wait a certain amount of time for the berries to grow and then repick them. That way, you can actually make it so that if you like want nothing but Oran berries that give you 10 HP back when you hit, I think it's like under 50%. you can then, you know, just have a whole entire stack of them and be like, cool, every time I lose, I can just put another one on. Pretty good for the very beginning. I'm going to showcase how that works. It's just like in Gen 2, you give it to your Pokemon, they hold on to it, and then once they hit a certain threshold, they'll use it. Where in this case, I believe they have to be under 50%, and they'll actually use it, because I'm already under 50%. Torchic uses it in the very beginning after round number 1. With that said, we are in route number 102, and with that, we have a Poochyena Ruby Sapphire version with a 15% chance of running into it, and a 30% chance in the Emerald version. Zigzagoon Ruby Sapphire, 30% chance with a 15% chance in the Emerald version. Wurmple has a 30% chance all across the board. A Lotad in the Sapphire Emerald versions, 20% chance, not in the Ruby version. And a C-Dot with a 20% chance in the Ruby version and only a 1% chance in the Emerald version, not in the Sapphire version. A Ralts has a 4% chance of running into all across the board. And then a Surskit, Ruby and Sapphire version has a 1% chance. None in the Emerald version. Once again, I will probably be looking into the surfing and the fishing once I am capable of doing that. In the very beginning, I kind of just want to talk about the grass chances of what you can run into, and that's really about it. And yeah, with that said, that is going to come to a wrap of the first part of our Pokemon Generation 3 Emerald walkthrough. I do hope you enjoy the rest of your evenings, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll catch you all in the next part.